Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Silent Bob, and all those terrible Jay and Silent Bob type pictures, man. You're listening to Drop the Mic, the only podcast that I listen to that I'm not a part of. Every podcast I listen to, I usually talk on it, but not fucking Drop the Mic. That's where I'm like, let me hear what the boys have to say. And now, we drop the mic.
I remember ruined dreams, chaos, but most of all, the Road Warrior.
Greetings from the warrior of the wasteland!
The gasoline will be ours. Just walk away.
There it is. Thousands of gallons, as much as you want. If anyone's gonna get in there, it's gonna be you.
Okay, so who's gonna drive the tanker?
You want to get out of here? You talk to me.
Somebody gets out of here alive.
You can run, but you can't hide!
Welcome back to our humble San Diego podcast. We're your hosts, Wesley Swanson and Chris Pawlak, and this is episode 354, Gasoline Dreams, where we aim to discuss everything about 1981's The Road Warrior. But before we journey back to the wasteland, let's get everybody warmed up out there, shall we? What up, Chris? How are you? Welcome back, dude.
Thanks for having me. I'm tired. As you know, before we got on air, we were talking, I've been working most of the days of this month of May.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 3 days off the entire month. So I am pretty exhausted, and this is a day off, but also a very busy day off for me, and the rest of this next week is very, very busy for me. So I hope I sound okay on air. I hope I don't tank your show, and I'm glad to have my voice back, because I was losing my voice the other night.
Very nice. It all worked out.
Yeah. If we had done the show on Saturday, it would have been bad.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah.
And now for a special news report. Brought to you by Drop the Mic.
Pop culture news. Well, how are you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
We talked before we got on air, but for our listeners out there, how are you?
Very good, very good. A lot of moving parts at work. Still trying to release content for this show,
Mhm.
and maintain that, I guess, trajectory that we've set for ourselves over the years. So thank you for sticking by me. But yeah, I'm doing good.
That's good. That's good. Want to give a death notice, an RIP to Roger Corman,
Mm-hmm.
who died a couple of weeks back. I think, as we only do the show once a month, so I kind of compile news stories throughout the month. So if you've covered any of these, please stop me.
Mm-hmm.
But RIP to Roger Corman. He was a trailblazing independent film producer and director. A lot of low-budget stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, Jesus, he directed 56 films, and he's a producer on almost 500 movies. So that's a huge body of work. I mean, hugely influential.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to just read you a list of the directors that got their start under Roger Corman. Blow your mind. James Cameron, Martin Scorsese, Ron Howard, Francis Ford Coppola, Jonathan Demme, Joe Dante, John Sayles, Peter Bogdanovich. All of them got their first, or one of their earlier works under Roger Corman.
Okay.
And kind of as an homage, he has made appearances in a lot of those directors' films over the years. You might have seen him. He's in Godfather Part 2. He's in The Howling. He's in The Silence of the Lambs, Apollo 13. He's even in Scream 3. Not that Wes Craven got his start under Roger Corman, but as a fan. He appeared, Jonathan Demme put him in over half of his movies, I think. Because he's in Swing Shift, he's in The Manchurian Candidate, he's in Silence of the Lambs, he's in Rachel Getting Married. What else? He's in Philadelphia. Like him and Demme were always really tight, and Demme was putting them in movies and just like a little cameo role, but it was always cool seeing him.
Mm-hmm.
So, want to give a shout out to him. You might not know his name, but the tree of directors that came off of him is crazy. And to think of like who started out under him and like where they are now or what they've done in their career since working for him. So R.I.P. to him. Another R.I.P. Dabney Coleman passed away. One of those great character actors. He always seemed to kind of play a jerk. He was very good at that in movies and TV. Some movies you might know him from. Melvin and Howard, speaking of Jonathan Demme. 9 to 5, great movie. Tootsie, great movie. War Games.
Mm-hmm.
And Cloak and Dagger. Have you ever seen Cloak and Dagger?
No, but I know about it.
Dude, this is a movie I watched like a bunch when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. It's pretty good.
Still.
Like I would like to sit down and rewatch it. But I remember watching it when I was younger and thinking, oh, like it's a pretty solid movie. It's also like kind of violent for. It might have been PG-13. I think this was after the PG-13 rating.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got Henry Thomas in it, Dabney Coleman, William Forsythe is in it. It's a pretty solid little thriller from having a young kid as the main character, and Dabney Coleman has like a dual role as both Henry Thomas's father and his imaginary friend. But it's a pretty solid flick. I would suggest checking it out. It's kind of like a forgotten movie, but it's pretty good.
Is that streaming anywhere right now?
I have no idea. I did not look that up.
All right.
But if someone wants to look up on IMDb, look up Cloak and Dagger from, I think, 84 or 85. It was like, I think it was Henry Thomas's first movie after E.T.
Okay.
I could be wrong. Correct me if I am, but I believe that was one of his first movies after E.T. Also, he did some TV shows. A show called Buffalo Bill, which I had never seen. I think it was when I was very young, but when I was reading the obituary on him, a lot of people were talking about Buffalo Bill being a pretty good show. He was like a newscaster from Buffalo, but he was like just kind of a crank or a cranky person. Was always butting heads with the senior management at the station, from what I understand. So I have to check that out. Drexel's Class, which is a show that I remember from when I was younger, where he was a teacher, I think was helped out by his two daughters. I think he was sentenced to. He was committed of a crime, like a white collar crime, and then got sentenced to be a teacher for this school. If I remember correctly, that was kind of the premise of the setup. Helped out by his two daughters. One of his daughters was the late Brittany Murphy, if I'm not mistaken. And then Boardwalk Empire. He had a pretty big role on Boardwalk Empire. R.I.P. to him. He was 92. Corman was 98. Those are good lives lived. But yeah, good actor. Always excelled at kind of playing jerks.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a great jerk in 9 to 5. He's a great one in Tootsie. So check those movies out. And check out Cloak and Dagger, if you can. We might have a new Catherine Bigelow movie.
Ooh, okay.
Netflix announced it would be producing a new film from Bigelow, a yet untitled thriller that supposedly takes place in real time as White House officials scramble to deal with an incoming missile attack on the United States. Super excited for that. Bigelow, we've obviously covered her on the show. You and I personally have done her twice. I know that you've done Point Break on the show.
Yeah.
We're huge fans. She doesn't make movies very often, so I'd be really excited to see what she has next. It's even been, 8 years since she last had a movie?
What was Detroit?
That was, 2017, so about 7 years. So, excited for that. There is no date on that, so it could be, I don't even know if it'll be the end of this year. It might be in the next year sometime. But that's the news on that. Speaking of another director that you and I both enjoy their work, Sean Baker's new film, Anora, won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival this year. No release date on that, but the screwball comedy stars Mikey Madison from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as an exotic dancer in a whirlwind romance with the son of a Russian oligarch. I'm excited for that. I think he's another director who, speaking of Robert Eggers before we got on the air, who's all of his movies we're fans of.
Mm-hmm.
Red Rocket especially is really good. Like, Simon Rex is great in that movie. That should have gotten him more recognition.
Yeah, at first I was very like, it's very like a cringy movie, but also I feel like that's intentional.
Yeah.
But it's great.
Yeah, he's a good sleaze in that movie as a washed up porn star, and he's obviously grooming the younger girl. But yeah, he's really fucking good in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida Project obviously is great.
Masterpiece.
Yeah. And Tangerine is a lot of fun as well. So I'm excited to see that. No release date on that. I expect that by the end of the year, though. If it's out at Cannes, it's probably coming in the next 6 months or so. And one last one. Steven Spielberg finally announced he will have a new film coming out, but not until May 2026. Plot details being kept under wraps, but it's described as an original event film with a story by Spielberg. And David Koepp is going to write the screenplay, and David Koepp has a very spotty track record as a screenwriter, a worse one as a director. I mean, he did Jurassic Park. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But he also did the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That's not so great. And then he's done some, I mean, he did Spider-Man. He did Carlito's Way. Great. He did Snake Eyes. Not so great. So he's got a very up and down track record.
Yep.
But he is a frequent collaborator of Spielberg's. We'll see what he does. And I've always been on the fence about War of the Worlds. Like, it's half of a good movie. Kept the screenplay for that one too. But May 2026 is when this new Spielberg movie's coming out. I'll be excited to see it. Hopefully it's not as shitty as Ready Player One.
I knew that was coming.
Never passing up an opportunity to bash Ready Player One.
I have a couple for you. They're pretty simple things, so we'll probably breeze through this real quick. But first up, Amazon and MGM Studios are moving forward with a Roadhouse sequel with Jake Gyllenhaal set to return as Dalton.
So I guess that movie was successful enough on Amazon.
Yeah, I think when it dropped, the day it dropped, which I watched it then too, it was like number one on the service, and I think it stayed there for a long time. So for whatever reason, the controversy or whatever, people tuned in. And, it was, I guess, pulled in the numbers.
Is Lyman coming back? Or no, because he was upset that they wouldn't give him a theatrical release?
Honestly, they haven't released that information yet. So I'll be curious to see if he returns, and at least they keep that consistency. Doesn't he have something else coming out?
He's got like a Matt Damon movie coming out. Supposedly he's still attached to that Tom Cruise movie that they wanted to shoot partly in space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, I don't know. So he's got his hands full with some other stuff.
Okay.
And I don't know if that Tom Cruise movie is ever going to go forward, but I think his next movie is that Damon film.
Okay. And you, just for the listeners out there, you have not seen the new Roadhouse yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Morbid curiosity, you're going to watch it?
Oh yeah, I'll watch it. So I like Gyllenhaal.
Okay.
I just think that Conor McGregor's a fucking clown.
Fellas. Moving on, all right. Actor Jeffrey Wright has officially joined the cast of The Last of Us Season 2, as I think he's reprising his role as Isaac. I guess he did the voice acting for the video game. Yeah.
Jeffrey Wright, great actor. Love seeing him. Obviously, he was great in American Fiction, one of our favorite films from earlier this year.
Which is streaming right now.
Yeah. And I was just talking to a friend of mine because he was a big fan of him on Westworld.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yo, check him out. He has a great season 3 arc on Boardwalk Empire where he's the villain and he's really fucking good in it.
He's also, can't forget, Commissioner Gordon.
That's right. He's good in the Batman.
Yeah.
He's a good Commissioner Gordon.
What else? Oh, did you hear about how, I guess, the next Matt Reeves Batman film is going to actually be called The Batman 2, which is a first in the history of the Batman films.
It's never had a numerical sequel. Yeah.
Nope. Which is, it's kind of odd.
Yeah.
That they would go that route, but I mean, it's okay, I guess.
It's kind of a weird title though, The Batman 2.
Yeah. The Batman.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
we'll see. Maybe that'll change.
Yeah, they can always switch it up, right?
Yeah.
That could be just a working title that they ran with.
Yeah.
In some TV news, Hulu's The Bear dropped a new trailer for season 3.
Can't wait.
Which will be debuting June 27th with all episodes streaming right away.
Can't wait.
It looks good.
Dude, that's such a great show. Jeremy Allen White and especially Iowa Debris, so good on that show.
Wrapping up news, Blumhouse has officially retconned The Exorcist Believer in favor of a new take brought to us by filmmaker Mike Flanagan, with Flanagan even going as far as promising his vision will be a radical new take. I'm sure.
Okay. I trust Flanagan. He's someone who has a very fucking solid body of work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Dr. Sleep was good.
And now it's time for the weekly recommendations.
I have 2, but I really had to scrape to get these.
Okay.
It was like a last minute. I didn't have anything when I started these notes or when I finished these notes the other day. But first one I want to recommend is there was a 4-part series on HBO or Max or whatever you want to call it, about the Stax record label.
Okay.
It's called Stax Soulsville, USA.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible. Stax was one of the best and at one point in time biggest. They got sold to Atlantic, but one of the biggest and best soul and R&B labels out there in the late 60s and early 70s.
Okay.
And just like the talent that they had on that roster, like Sam and Dave and Rufus Thomas and Carla Thomas and Otis Redding was their main star. Booker T and the MGs, who were kind of like the house band, but they also had a solo career as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just an incredible documentary series. I'm a huge fan of soul music, obviously, but especially of Otis Redding. So just watching like some of the Otis Redding like footage was giving me chills. So I highly recommend that. It's called Stax Soulsville, USA. It's only 4 parts, but you can burn through it. But just the talent that they had on that label was incredible. And the second one I have is a movie that we've referenced before, and you and I both really like. I just rewatched The Fisher King.
Oh yeah,
really great movie, Terry Gilliam film. Jeff Bridges and Robin Williams are so good in that movie. And just rewatching it, it's got those Terry Gilliam touches. Even the scenes like in the mental hospital kind of show you a glimpse of what those scenes were going to be like in 12 Monkeys too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it was a really good movie from the early 90s. I think 91. You know, we talk about 99 a lot. We talk about 95 with me, obviously. But 1991 was another really fucking solid year for film.
Mm-hmm.
Like Boys in the Hood, The Fisher King, Terminator 2, JFK is out in 91. Silence of the Lambs is a 1991 movie. What else? The Rocketeer, great movie, great underrated film.
A lot of iconic work.
Yeah.
Like super, how do you say, longevity there.
Yeah. So I don't know if we've covered a film from 1991 yet, but we will. We will for sure. Backdraft is out in 1991. It's a really fucking solid year if you go back and look at some of the movies that got released then.
Have you picked up The Fisher King on Criterion yet?
I do not have it yet. No.
I haven't.
It's on my list of that and To Die For. I have Trainspotting, but I want to get the Trainspotting Criterion that they released. Oh, Inside Llewyn Davis that we talked about. Was it last month? Mm-hmm. I don't have those on Criterion yet. They're on my list of things to get. I always wait for like the end of the year because they always do like a big half off sale, and that's usually when I'll collect a fucking stack from them.
Hand me down your Trainspotting if you get the Criterion, because I don't believe I have it.
Okay, for sure.
I only have the book.
Have you read the book?
Yes.
How is it?
A bit dense.
Okay.
As you would expect, I think. But yeah, it's good.
Okay.
It's good.
Gilliam's probably known more for his 80s work and his work with Monty Python, but the 3 movies he makes in the 90s are really fucking good, dude. I would argue better than anything he does before or after.
Mm-hmm.
Because he does The Fisher King, he does 12 Monkeys, and he does Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas might be a divisive take, but that movie's really good. As someone who loved the movie the very first time I saw it.
But you're also a big Hunter S. Thompson fan.
I am a very big Hunter S. Thompson fan, and I've read that book multiple times because it's a breeze to get through, and it's just so fun.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a pretty fucking great adaptation of that book. And both Depp and Benicio del Toro are amazing in it. So I argue that it's one of Terry Gilliam's best films. I think we had this discussion last year when we did 12 Monkeys. That's probably my second favorite film of his, after 12 Monkeys. And then Fisher King is probably the third.
One of Depp's, standout roles, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was going back to that word iconic, where you're like, if you see that poster, you know exactly where it's from.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to rec Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, even though I guess you were kind of lukewarm on it a bit.
Yes, I was. I watched it earlier today because it was the first chance I had to see it. I was trying to see it Friday, but that was if I left work early, but we had so much to do that I still left work at 5:30 after being there at 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I caught it today. It's okay. I was kind of just on it. I think that Anya Taylor-Joy and Hemsworth are both really great in it. But at the same time, I was kind of it's a little bit long.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like you were saying, they spend so much time when she's younger. Like, you're kind of waiting for Anya Taylor-Joy to come in and take over the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into it when we talk the Road Warrior, but there's so much CGI in it. It was almost to the point where I was distracted half the time with it. That's my take. It's not a bad movie, but also I would rank it fairly low on the Mad Max universe film.
Better than Beyond Thunderdome?
Beyond Thunderdome is the absolute bottom.
Okay.
Even if it does have a great Tina Turner performance in it.
Oh, yeah. Everybody, go, even though Chris doesn't like it that much, go support Furiosa because nobody's going to watch it. It's not making money.
I heard it didn't do all that well. No, I mean, absolutely go and see it. Go and support it. I'm not trying to say don't go watch it. It was a terrible movie. It's not. It's good. It was just, I was underwhelmed by it.
Gotcha. So technically it was number one at the box office for the Memorial Day weekend, but it was record-breaking low.
Yeah, I read that it was something like a 30-year low at the box office.
It still beat Garfield.
Well, that's good. Fuck that CGI mess. When I was a kid, there was the animated specials on CBS. They were really fucking fun. Show those instead. Don't give me some CGI Garfield movie.
Stop Making Sense is on HBO now. If you're a Talking Heads fan, A24 fan, go check that out. A classic concert.
Speaking of Jonathan Demme again.
Again, yeah. I did go watch The Strangers the day that it came out, and I was speaking of underwhelmed, I was underwhelmed. As a horror fan, I was expecting a little something more, and it's very formulaic. And if you're familiar with the tropes of the slasher genre or horror just in general, then there's not much that you haven't seen there. And for some reason, everybody is going to see that movie, and it's made a shit ton of money, which is cool for Rennie Harlan.
What was the last Rennie Harlan movie that was out? That was any good, dude?
I couldn't tell you.
Deep Blue Sea?
That would be
even Deep Blue Sea is kind of bad, but it's pretty fucking enjoyable.
Yeah, it's like a guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
and a big budget movie, and that movie made money, right?
Yeah, that was a big hit.
LL Cool J, man.
Yeah,
he raps the fucking whole. They close the movie, and he's like rapping the plot of the movie,
basically.
Right? It's classic.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now for the movie focus of the week.
Our movie focus of the week is The Road Warrior. It's rated R. It was released in 1981. It's an action sci-fi flick, technically. The runtime is 1 hour and 34 minutes. It's directed by George Miller, written by Miller, Terry Hayes, and Brian Hennett. In a post-apocalyptic world set after the effects of World War III, Max searches the wasteland in desperate need of fuel. He soon finds himself caught in the middle of a heated battle between a gang of ruthless marauders and an encampment of settlers. The original Mad Max was massively successful, even though its director had said he had a terrible time while making the picture. This prompted the filmmaker to go in a new direction, being offered a handful of projects, but ultimately coming back to the idea of a Mad Max sequel, in which a bigger budget would allow him to tell a story on an even larger scale. The production started shooting in different locations in and around Australia in 1981 and took place in the wintertime, lasting about 12 weeks. With Warner Brothers acquiring the rights to release Mad Max 2 in the US, they opted to use the title The Road Warrior for fear of Americans being unfamiliar with the character of Max. Road Warrior would gross $23.6 million at the domestic box office and $36 million worldwide. The entire Mad Max franchise has been hugely influential for pop culture over the years, being spoofed and imitated countless times. It's not hard to see that the dystopian atmosphere that George Miller continues to bring to life still stands as effective and tall as ever. The Road Warrior is a violent and weird action film that isn't afraid to play around with its kinetic energy, and that makes it one of the most original and fun experiences you might ever have in this genre. 5 out of 5 Australian cattle dogs. Thank you.
His dog is cool.
Yes.
This is technically Mad Max 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's billed as now.
Mm-hmm.
I still refer to it as strictly The Road Warrior. I just think that's a cooler title.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And I think its official title now is Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior. But I always refer to it as The Road Warrior because that's how I know it. And like I said, I think it's just a cooler title.
Yeah. I like the kind of ambiguity of it,
mm-hmm.
where you're just like, it's not directly connected. Like you have to be in the know.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And then of course, when you start the movie, they give you a recap.
Yeah.
So then you know. Interesting.
I wonder if, obviously this is an Australian film and Mad Max was a big hit in Australia, so I'm wondering if that was more so to kind of loop in other places and other people in on who Mad Max was, because as you said in the intro, it wasn't well known outside of Australia. Mad Max had been out in the States, but was kind of like an art house, kind of midnight thing where not a lot of people knew it, and that's obviously why Warner Brothers called it The Road Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if that recap is kind of to familiarize everyone else with what's going on
mm-hmm.
before jumping into the film.
Even though I feel like The Road Warrior or Mad Max 2, whatever you want to call it, it can stand alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need to know Max's backstory.
There's nothing in it except for like one line that Papagallo says to him when he's trying to convince him to stay and to to drive the truck. There's only one line in it where he says, why are you like this? Why are you alone? Did you do this? Did you lose family or something? That's the only line that would link it to Mad Max. Nothing else in this film links to it.
Well, his leg brace.
Well, yeah, but
which is still
even if you hadn't seen Mad Max, you wouldn't really be questioning that.
Yeah.
There's nothing that kind of says, "Oh yeah, like this is Max, and this is what his story was before he got here."
Yeah, it's kind of impressive how untethered it is.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the introduction introduces you or reintroduces you into that, but without that introduction, the movie would still stand alone. You would not be completely lost.
Absolutely.
Unless you're one of those assholes. It's like, I need to know everything that happened to this guy before the movie happened.
Real quick, I want to know, are you a bigger fan of, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but are you a bigger fan of the Lord Among Us or Toe Cutter?
Humongous, because it's just, he's a bananas.
Yeah.
He's a bananas villain who honestly doesn't have much screen time.
No.
I think it's been a while since I've actually sat down and watched Mad Max. I was hoping to rewatch all of them in both the run-up to the show and Furiosa, but just with the amount of time I did not have this month, I didn't get a chance. I barely got a chance to watch Road Warrior, honestly. So I don't remember exactly how much Hugh Keys-Byrne, that was the dude's name?
Yeah.
Who's Toe Cutter, and he's also a Morton Joe in Fury Road. It's the same actor.
Yeah.
He's passed away, so it's not the same guy in Furiosa.
But that guy looks dramatically younger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah. And they did a good job with the makeup and everything in Furiosa to make him look like a Morton Joe. But I don't remember exactly how much screen time Toe Cutter has in Mad Max, but I'm pretty sure it's more than Humongous has in The Road Warrior. He also probably has more lines. Humongous only has a few lines, like when he's trying to convince everyone to leave.
Yep.
That's basically all he has, and then when he's yelling at them for trying to run away, and he says, "Oh, you defied me, so now we're gonna bring it." And then there's like, it's kind of without sound, but there's that scene where he's like kind of pumping his troops up, but it's just, you just see him just like making some big like grand speech, but you don't really hear what he's saying. It's just kind of cutting back and forth between some stuff. It's like a montage.
I just keep thinking, when I see him, I just think he's gonna start being like, what's that song? I still believe, with the bondage get up.
I know. All of his gang are like all in the bondage gear and shit. Wes especially, he's got like the assless chaps on.
Yeah. It's just like, they can't, and yeah, he's like riding a bike and shit. It's like, that can't be comfortable.
No.
At all.
But yeah, they're all like, they all have like their bondage gear. Even Humongous has like his cod piece and some straps, and that's basically all he's got.
Yeah, he's not really wearing much.
No. It probably doesn't get that cold out there.
Yeah.
Although, because they shot in wintertime in Australia is summertime up here. Anyone who does not know that. I'm sure that it was very cold when they were shooting, and all those dudes are running around with like barely any clothes on.
And then he wears a hockey mask because he was severely burned, right?
Yeah, and then I read originally they thought that might be Max's partner, Jim Goose.
Goose, yeah.
From Mad Max, because he is killed by Toe Cutter and he dies in a car explosion, or at least that's what you're led to believe. Or he's burned very, very badly in the explosion. So they were, I think, at one point in time early on, we're thinking, oh, it might be like his partner.
But again, I think that they they ended up not including that because they were like, well, who is gonna, like, what if people don't recognize or know who Goose is in the first place? So it'll be like this lame reveal, you know?
Yeah.
So then they just didn't do it.
And honestly, the film works just fine without it.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be someone else connected to Max, you know, in this wasteland where it's years after the events of the first film. It's not like, oh, hey, like, I know this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the Red Letter Media did like a review of the Road Warrior some years back.
Okay.
And they were talking about, they're like, Lord Humongous actually has, like, he's like a pretty reasonable guy because he just wants the gas. He's like, I'm not going to hurt anyone. We just want the gas. Just walk away. Like, we don't want, he wasn't about the violence. He just wanted the gas. It wasn't until, like, they tried to get one over on him and tried to, like, escape or, like, send people out that he got upset. But at first he was just like, yeah, like, just walk away. Like,
yeah, he's like, I'll spare everybody in your compound. You just walk away.
And then there's that debate when it's inside the compound. It's like, yeah, maybe we should do that. You know, we can escape with our lives. But then it's, well, can you really trust him?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Wes seems like a pretty crazy dude.
Yeah.
You know, he's liable to do whatever.
I mean, they kind of set him up to be the crazy one with the introduction to the film, you know, where he gets shot in the hand, was it his hand?
Like his,
the
I
arrow?
think his forearm. Yeah.
With the arrow, and then he's like at the top of the hill, like, and he kind of pulls it out while Max is watching him, but is very sinister.
Yeah.
And then he just leaves.
Yeah, like, I don't know why they just left. Like, they had dudes. They could have overtaken Max.
It was like they were like, oh, this isn't worth our time.
He's not worth it. He's not worth it, and the amount of gas that he was getting out of that car in the beginning wasn't worth it.
Mm-hmm.
The guzzling. Maybe we should call this the guzzling dreams.
I was going to pitch that to you, and I was like, well, maybe.
I was thinking that, but then, like, maybe some people wouldn't get that reference.
Yeah.
But who knows? But I was thinking about that because they call it guzzling in Road War. They even make references to it in Furiosa as well.
And Fury Road, right?
Yeah. That's what everyone is after, because that's in short supply after the apocalypse. I think there's supposed to be it's obviously the introduction is setting up that there was a war, and that's what devastated the landscape. I'm guessing nuclear at that point in time. But yeah, because gasoline is in such short supply, everyone is after them.
Also, how are these settlers? How do they have, like, diesel or whatever they like? It seems like they know what they're doing.
Yeah,
but then they don't have great defenses.
No,
at all.
Well, that's Fury Road and Furiosa both take it to where, like, gas seems pretty abundant, and also so do the bullets.
Yeah.
But in the Road Warrior, gas is, you know, the most precious resource now, and people don't have a lot of ammunition. And most of the even the Marauder gang and obviously the settlers are using, like, bows and arrows and flamethrowers.
They have, like, one gun, right?
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. And even Max with the sawed off is revealed later on that he didn't even have ammo for it.
Mm-hmm. It's just the threat of the violence. The intimidation, I guess, factor.
So I think that's what makes this movie stand apart as well, is, you know, everyone doesn't have the resources that you think they would have.
They kind of largely use their vehicles as weapons too, right? I've always loved that that kind of, I guess that you would call it like George Miller's trademark, where he kind of does that he speeds up the film and, like, random, like, sections where when you see that, you know that you're watching one of his movies, because it's so off-putting. But it's like you've come to, I don't know, I've come to love it. They do it in Furiosa over and over again, and then, yeah, of course he does it in this one as well. But it's something about it just works too.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he started out doing that for budgetary reasons, it looks like, right?
Mad Max was a low budget film.
That was very fucking low, but that was like $300,000, $400,000 budget only.
This one had a significantly higher budget, but even the budget for this movie was still like $5 million Australian dollars or so, like pretty low.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of that stuff was for budgetary reasons. Speeds it up to make it look like everyone's going faster.
Yeah, and it just looks so nutty on the. Yeah.
Because The Road Warrior has always been one of my favorite films. I've been lucky enough to see it in the movie theater. It was awesome. It was R.I.P. to the Ken Theater. That's where Joel and I watched it for a midnight film one time.
Mm-hmm.
It was so fucking awesome. I think that was the first time he'd ever seen it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was like really blown away by it. It's one of my favorite movies because it's such a lean action film. Even though there isn't a lot of action in it.
Yeah.
But the film's it's only like 90 minutes, 95 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not long at all. And it just moves because it's not trying to set anything up. It's not there's not tons of backstory. Not every movie needs to be fucking Chinatown. It's simplicity, and that's why I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Like John Wick, the first John Wick. Its simplicity is what makes the movie so good. Or, we talked about Assault on Precinct 13 a couple years back. Like, it's a very simple film that's just an amazing action film. It doesn't need to have a ton of shit that sets everything up. You don't need to have backstory on everything. And that's kind of where Furiosa was losing me. It was kind of like, oh, I didn't need to know a lot of the backstory. And it didn't need to be 2.5 hours long. It's the simplicity of The Road Warrior is what I love.
Mm-hmm.
The timeline for Mad Max movies is bonkers.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
They kind of have no real continuity between films. I mean, Furiosa obviously does because it's a prequel to Fury Road, but there's no super continuity. I mean, there's a reason why Fury Road is basically one long car chase, and that's because that's the fucking best part of The Road Warrior is the climax.
Mm-hmm.
As good as that movie is, like the climax for The Road Warrior rules. That whole 20-minute sequence. It's just an incredible piece of filmmaking and stunt work. And it's all real too, and that's what's so awesome watching it is those cars are really crashing. There's real stunt people falling and getting thrown off. I mean, there's that crazy scene where the dude on the motorcycle hits the car and just goes cartwheeling through the air.
Yep.
That guy got hurt for real, not badly. He broke his leg, but you watch that and you're thinking man, that guy could have broken his fucking neck or his back or something.
Yeah. He
just goes flying.
How did they get away with some of this stuff?
They don't have safety precautions or anything on set.
Yeah, it's very, very much feels like guerrilla style.
I have something in my notes where when the tanker rolls, when the tanker rolls over, it was thought to be so dangerous that the stunt driver was not permitted to eat anything within 12 hours of doing that stunt in case it went bad and he had to be flown to the hospital and go into surgery. So it was basically this is the most dangerous thing we could do. You could probably hurt yourself or fucking die. So we're going to do this. Now, I should tell you, I don't know if you're aware of this, but George Miller was a doctor before he got into filmmaking.
In Australia, right?
Yes, in Australia. So, he's kind of a medic on set in case anything goes wrong. But yeah, that stunt, the trucks rolling over stunt, I thought was wild that they were just yeah, this is dangerous enough. You might be going to the hospital, so be prepared. But just the guy that flies off of the motorcycle, his name is Guy Norris. He's one of the main stunt guys on the film. Just rewind that scene over and over again. He flies so far after he hits the car and goes flying over the handlebars of his bike. He just cartwheels through the air. And that scene in the movie is the scene where he broke his leg.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that that is all that he broke.
And that they caught it.
Yeah.
And to put it in the final cut or whatever.
Basic plot is there's Max. He wants the gas. He tries to steal the gyro captain's gas. The gyro captain like pops up out of the sand. And there's that funny scene where, he's got the crossbow on him and he wants him to go to the car and get the gas.
Don't hurt the snake.
And Max has the knife. He's like, oh, you might have a weapon in there. He's like, I might pin your head to the car. He's like sticking the crossbow in him.
Mm-hmm.
But then Max tells him to go around, and he goes around to the front, and that's where the dog catches him, and Max is able to capture him instead. But there's just that funny little exchange between them. And then when he's driving with the gyro captain, I love it when the dog is holding the
oh yeah
the tripwire on the shotgun.
It's like attached to a bone.
Yeah.
If he does anything out of line, he's gonna.
And then he sees like the rabbit run across the landscape, and the captain gets super scared, and he just looks at the dog, and the dog's just cool. It's kind of like, oh, a rabbit, but just like doesn't go crazy. So, and the captain tells him he knows where there's like this, the plant, the gasoline plant. So he wants to take Max there, and then they're watching, and then they see not only the Marauders, but they see at one point in time like people leave going in all different directions,
mm-hmm.
and then the Marauders chase them. Excuse me, and then you see the Marauders kill 2 people or wound the one guy. He's not dead. Max saves him and takes him into the compound, and then kind of gets pulled into this conflict, would you say?
Yeah.
Even though it's not really a conflict yet, but they're being harassed by this band that just is after the gas. And that's another thing where there was kind of like, is Lord Humongous like a former cop? Because there's some cop cars in that that group of vehicles that the Marauders have. Max has his souped up V8 car that I think he has at the very end of Mad Max.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there are some actual like police cars that the Marauders have. But he gets pulled into this conflict where he says, "Hey, I saved your life." They confiscate his vehicle. They don't want him to leave, but he says, "I'll make you a deal." They want to get the gas out. They want to drive the tanker out, but they can't because the Marauders are around. And he says, I know, I saw like a truck a couple days ago that can carry this. It's the truck that he's at the very beginning when he's being chased by Wes
mm-hmm.
and his people. So he says, I can get you this truck if you give me all the gas I can take. I need diesel to start the truck. And then that's the deal that they make with them. So that's what he does for them. And then after he delivers, there's a great action scene where he's driving the truck in and he's being chased by the guys. Humongous like shoots at him. He has that like fucking huge like 44 Magnum.
Yeah.
With the scope on it. Shoots through the engine block. And then they get into the compound. There's like a couple of guys there who get killed, and then Wes manages to escape. And then they want Max to drive the tanker out. And Max says, "Nope, I'm done. Just give me my car back. That was the deal." And even though some people are upset, Papagallo says, "That's the deal that we made with them. We'll stick by that deal." They allow him to leave. But as he's leaving, he's chased down and crashes and is badly hurt. And then the guy goes to steal his gas, and then there's a self-destruct button on it, basically, that Max arms. And then the guy explodes. It's Toady. He's like Humongous's herald.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, who's It's that scene at the beginning where, they
Mhm.
go into the compound, and Humongous chases them and says that's where he lays out the deal that if you leave, like, we'll let you leave. But Toadie's, he's talking them up. And then there's the feral kid with the boomerang
Mhm.
that throws the boomerang. And it hits Wes's homeboy in the head, his boyfriend or companion.
So
it's not really clear.
I did some research, or I came across some research about that.
Yeah.
Where I guess a lot of people assume that Wes was gay.
Yeah.
And that's his lover or whatever. But I guess what was actually supposed to happen, I'm not sure if this was actually shot or not shot, but the actor who portrayed Wes said that originally in The Road Warrior they had some kind of scene or I guess exposition for Wes where it was told to us that he had actually saved that guy as a little boy and became kind of like a father figure to him, whatever. So it was almost like a protege type of deal. But that never made it into the cut. I guess when they screened the film without it, people liked it better that way. So then they just left it very like ambiguous.
Hey, again, simple is better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't need to know his backstory. I don't really care who that guy is to him.
Yeah.
It's obvious that it's someone that he cares about because he's devastated when he's killed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason why he's even more incensed to go after Max and the people at the compound.
He's also, like, that's a really brutal death with the boomerang.
Yeah, it goes like right through the kid's head.
Yeah.
And he pulls it out, throws it back at the feral kid. It does a little backflip. I remember watching that in the theater with Joel, and Joel's like, he starts laughing like when the kid does the backflip because it's so weird.
Yeah.
Catches it, does the backflip like into his little foxhole or whatever he has. But then he throws it again, and fucking Toadie tries to catch it and gets his fingers chopped off.
And he's like not phased.
He's not phased, but then everyone's fucking clowning him.
And he just starts laughing too. It's so sad for him. It's just like
they just didn't care about him.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, that's because everyone knows he was a clown. But Toadie's the one that explodes. He tries to get the gas out of Max's car after it crashes, after they run him off the road. And he gets blown up when the car explodes.
And unfortunately, Max isn't able to save his dog.
Nope. They kill the dog, unfortunately.
Which is off screen.
It is off screen. It's still upsetting.
It is.
Because it's a pretty cool dog.
Yeah.
Which I believe was a rescue.
Oh, really?
Like a rescue dog, and then like one of the crew members that like took it home with them after the film was done.
Very nice.
So it got a good home.
And his name is just Dog.
Just Dog. Wasn't that what Norman Reedus called the dog on The Walking Dead that he had?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it just Dog?
And then Daniel Craig in Dragon Tattoo, where he's like, Cat.
So when they're at the compound, it's the gyro captain. He's like trying to impress the blonde. You know, he's like really smitten with her. Max gets the truck, and I mean, there's not a lot of names in the film. I think her credit is like Warrior Woman.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of like the number 2.
Yeah.
There, you know, she says, "Hey, like I had you wrong," you know, because she thought that he was going to abandon them, but he went and delivered the truck like he said he would. Gives them a chance, you know. He stands with them in the fight against the guys.
Yep.
But again, he doesn't have a lot of dialogue.
Nope.
In the film. You know, he doesn't say a whole lot, especially the whole beginning part of the film. He has no dialogue. I don't think he has dialogue until maybe the gyro captain, and even then it's just like a line or two. And then when they're up on the hill watching, he doesn't say a whole lot either.
Well, it's, you know, even though, I mean, thinking about where he comes from the first film, it would make sense that he's very, like, desensitized.
Yeah.
Like he's just wandering aimlessly through life now because his meaning, like the meaning of his life has been stripped away.
Yeah.
So it's like, where do I go from here? And that's why he has this like inner battle of even caring to help these people in the first place, right?
And he keeps telling them, like, hey, I'm just here for the gas, you know? He tells the gyro captain that, or not the gyro captain, the guy that they save after the Marauders.
Oh, yeah.
Like, shoot him with the arrows and pin him to the car and kill and rape the woman that he was with.
Yeah.
You know, the guy's, you know, wants to thank him, and he's like, hey, I'm just here for the gas. You know, that's all he wants. Doesn't care about anything else.
Yeah, and they take Max takes that gentleman back to the compound, and by the time they get there, even though they have struck up this deal, the guy passes away, unfortunately.
The guy's dead, and they say, well, your deal died with him.
Mm-hmm.
But Papagallos, you know, decides, no, we'll stick with that deal. We'll be honorable people. But there's that whole discussion about like what they want to do. I think when Humongous gives him the choice.
Yeah.
And then there's that great shot of Gibson, and he's just like, oh, like, hey, you want the gas? You want to get out here? You talk to me. Because he knows that he can deliver the truck. He knows that they can get out if they listen to him. It's the captain that saves him after he crashes, flies him back to the compound.
What do you call that? His
little gyroscope.
Yeah.
Copter.
That's so crazy that works in that setting. That's impressive. And he tells the little kid, like, hey, don't touch it. Don't touch the blade.
The feral kid.
Yeah.
But he comes through as well in the end, you know. He joins the fight. He kind of gives a little bit of cover to the caravan as they're leaving. You know, he's dropping Molotov cocktails on the cars. And he gets shot down. And it looks... I'm surprised he didn't get killed because that crash looks pretty brutal.
He throws a snake on some guy, right?
Yeah, he drops one of the snakes on him. But when he crashes, like, he almost goes, like, face first into the ground. And I know that's probably, you know, not... They really didn't have someone, like, in that crash. But I'm surprised that, in context of the film, he walks away from that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, that's the deal that Max makes with them is... I'll leave, but when he gets ambushed and injured, you know, the captain takes him back, and they nurse him back to health, and then they're coming up with the plan about what to do. They have the tanker working again. Yeah, that's a funny scene when the guys they're relaying like what's wrong with the tanker, you know, what needs to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And one, like the mechanic is saying the one thing, and then like the blonde guy is shouting back, and they're like, "Oh yeah, what does that mean?" Oh yeah, it means it's not going to run. It needs to be fixed. And they say like how many days or how long. And they say it does like 24 hours.
Yeah,
is what they say. And the guy's like, "Yeah, you got 12." They decide that they're going to drive out with the tanker. You know, they're going to have some vehicles covered. They're going to have people riding on the tanker, much like the War Boys do in Fury Road.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll have like kind of a fortified position on top of the tanker. And their job is to provide cover as the tanker makes its way. And Max comes out, even though he's still injured, says, "I'll drive it." You know, he steps up and decides to help, even though he's probably not in the best of shape at the moment. But he decides to drive their tanker out for them.
He's pretty much got one good eye, right?
Yeah, because his other eye is swollen. Got black eyes, you know, he's injured and beat up. As great as the movie is, obviously the climax is incredible. So he drives out, and then there's just this 20-minute chase scene, and the stunt work in it is incredible. You know, you see real cars crashing, people falling off of their vehicles, off the tanker. You know, the people get shot off the tanker. The woman shoots a couple of people, and then Wes has that like four barrel harpoon that he turns around and shoots her. Wes is like chained up on Humongous's vehicle to like start the chase.
Yeah.
And I guess Humongous is like, okay, like let him loose, and then the dude jumps down with like the chain, the bolt cutters.
Yep.
Like cuts the chains off Wes, and then Wes jumps into a vehicle.
It's kind of like, dude, you guys wrote that? Like, what were you...
Why was he chained up in the first place?
Yeah.
Was he chained up because he wanted his revenge? And that was like the way of just kind of keeping him calm? And then they're just like, oh, like maybe we should discuss should join the fight. So then they like cut him loose.
Yeah.
Even going back to the whole cop thing, like that guy that cuts him loose is dressed like a police officer. He's dressed, like the cops in the first Mad Max are dressed.
Yeah.
So there's that debate as to whether or not some of those people, of Humongous's people, are like former police. But like that whole sequence, I think, is amazing. I think that's one of the best action sequences in film. And just thinking about, like, that's all practical stunt work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we obviously talked about the dude flying off of the bike, but just seeing all that, or like when the guy gets shot with the harpoon that's on the back of the tanker, and it's like dragging the car behind him, and the car is like crashing and flipping and all of that. Like, that's for real. And then finally, like, that guy falls off and falls off the back, and then that releases the car from the back, so he's not dragging it still. The feral kid jumps on the truck, even though everyone was trying to keep him off, but he jumps on the truck.
Mm-hmm.
Max doesn't know he's there, and then all of a sudden he's trying to escape one of Humongous's henchmen. So he climbs around to the front. Max just picks him up and pulls him into the passenger seat. He finally has ammo for his shotgun that Papagallos gives him. Which is another funny scene, is when they come across him and the gyro captain, like come across like the wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And he's digging around, and he pulls out like the lone shotgun shell, and he puts it into the shotgun. You could tell that it was empty.
Yeah.
And the gyro captain is like really upset about that. Like, oh, it was empty the entire time. There's also that scene where they're watching. Where he's watching, he's eating the dog food.
Oh, yeah.
And the captain like pulls out his spoon. He's like waiting to get some.
And he throws it, but his dog gets to it first. Yeah.
And he's just getting like scraps in the end.
Because he tries to take it from dog, and dog's like, hey, like, no, dude. This is mine.
So during the chase, Wes gets on the tanker. Humongous is following behind him, and everyone dies. Like, everyone that was on the tanker gets killed, and then Papagallos drives up and is trying to get the kid to jump onto his vehicle, and Humongous comes up behind him and throws that weird trident-looking thing and impales him, and then Papagallos dies. And then Wes comes around. There's the other guy that has like kind of like the claw thing that he breaks through and catches Max in the shoulder and kind of pins him like to the back. And then there was the guy that's on top that shoots the arrow, and they're like, I always thought it like went into his leg, but I don't think it does. I think it hits the seat next to him. And Max shoots the guy that's on the side of the truck, and then shoots through the roof at the guy that's on top.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's before that, but there's one of the cars that's chasing him, and Max like pops out of the driver's seat really quick and shoots the windshield. And that was always like a brutal scene when I would watch that when I was younger, because I was like, man, it's just like an explosion of glass and blood that you see like in the front seat. I mean, he shoots him with the shotgun. But when Wes comes down, Wes surprises him, and all of the shells that he was trying to reload the gun go flying out the window, and there's just like the lone shell on the hood. And Wes gets thrown off. You think he flies over the hood.
Mm-hmm.
And Max is still being pursued by Humongous, and he's trying to get the kid to get the shell. And at that point in time, it seems like he doesn't care about the kid, because he's just like, he's putting him in the most dangerous situation. He keeps telling him, hey, like, get the bullet, get the shell. But he can't reach it. He's obviously got to drive, but also like that claw thing is kind of pinning him to the cab. So like he tosses the kid out there, and then Wes pops up from the front of the truck. He was hanging on like he was Indiana Jones or something. And then Wes is on the front of the truck, and Max, he has turned the truck around at this point and sees Humongous coming up. So he just like crashes right into Humongous, kills both of them, but that's also what flips the tanker in the end. There's also that scene where the two guys from the compound that they had captured earlier are strapped to the front of the vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Like much like Fury Road, like what they do with Max and Fury Road.
Yeah.
They have them strapped to the front. And then either like Max hits the brakes or something, not knowing that vehicle is coming up behind him, and those two guys get smashed into the back end of the tanker. But there's like guys getting sucked under the trucks, like on the motorcycle and everything. Cars like flipping over, cars getting run through. Just it's like nothing but destruction. Good stunt work.
And there's a lot of music. The score is very heavy throughout this.
Shout out to Brian May who did the score, but not Brian May from Queen. It's another Brian May.
Also composed the first one, right?
Yes. Does not do Beyond Thunderdome, though.
Because it was trash.
Joel and I were just talking about Beyond Thunderdome because he was asking me the other day when we were going down to that party. He was like, "Oh yeah, I just rewatched like Beyond Thunderdome." He's like, "It's been years since I've seen that movie, but for some reason that was the one that we remember from when we were younger because that was the one that seemed to be on HBO a lot. So that's probably the one up until some point in time I had seen the most of."
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it when I was younger. And it's not a terrible, terrible movie, but it's just not good. And honestly, like, Tina Turner is the best part of that film.
And it's also just kind of retracts by doing PG-13.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Yeah, it's like a weird Peter Pan, like half of a Peter Pan movie once they leave Bartertown.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the Lost Tribe of Children, which apparently Miller wanted to like kind of a Lord of the Rings film. Not a Lord of the Rings, excuse me, a Lord of the Flies type film. And that's where like the kids like on their own out in the wilderness came about. And then was like, oh, well, what if Mad Max like stumbles upon these kids? And that's where kind of like the second half of that film developed. But it's just everything after like Bartertown is just kind of lame.
Also, for anybody who's listening to this, all three of those original films and the Fury Road, I think, are streaming on Max right now.
Probably, yeah, because they're all Warner Brothers properties, even though Mad Max was not a Warner Brothers film.
It was originally released by Vestron, I think, in the U.S.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And Warner picked up the rights to the rest of them. I'll have to go back and watch Beyond Thunderdome. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but looking back on it now, I was like, yeah, it's kind of lame. And having now seen at this point in time, having seen Mad Max and The Road Warrior and Fury Road and everything after watching Beyond Thunderdome a lot when I was a kid, it's like, oh yeah, those movies are so much better than Thunderdome.
That guy did Happy Feet.
He has a wild career.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, a lot of people know him for Mad Max, but he did Happy Feet. I think he wrote and produced the first Babe, directs the second one, which I hear is bonkers. Does The Witches of Eastwick, I think is the follow-up to Thunderdome, which is another weird swing for him. Does a movie called Lorenzo's Oil, which is about a kid that has like a disease. It's been a long time since I've seen that, but it's kind of like based because he was a doctor, and it's kind of a medical-based drama.
Yeah,
because of his experience in that field.
Yeah,
but yeah, he has his career is pretty nutso. I can't remember the last movie that he made before Fury Road. It might have been Happy Feet too. He might have been dealing with like Babe and Happy Feet and everything for years before he shows up with Fury Road. And even then, like between Fury Road and the last movie they did, 3,000 Years of Longing, it's 8 years, 7-8 years. Did you watch that?
No.
It's good. You should watch
it.
Yeah. Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton are both very good in it. And I'm actually surprised they came out with Furiosa like so quick after that movie. Although I do think that movie may have been delayed because of COVID. So maybe that was finished a while back, and then he was working on Furiosa.
He had been working on Furiosa.
Yeah. But it's always weird when someone has such a gap between films, and all of a sudden, like, they do two almost back to back.
He's also 80 years old.
I know. That's nuts.
Who knows with this guy?
Yeah.
He doesn't have any rules, it seems like. But definitely probably not another Mad Max movie if the numbers don't pick up.
Well. And I feel bad about that because I wish it would do huge numbers, but I don't know if it was just kind of a lackluster feel or people were just like, oh, Fury Road is so good, there was no need to do anything. Because I know that movie was such a huge like kind of moment in cinema, like him having this big comeback and just an incredible action film that kind of wasn't expected. And being 30 years after the last one, everyone was kind of like, oh, like, who's really going to care? And then everyone sees it, and it's an incredible film. It gets nominated for a bunch of Oscars including Best Picture. I'll have to see. He might have been up for a Best Director award, too, for Fury Road.
Which was so, like you said, it was such a groundbreaking moment, I think, for movies, because you would have never thought, as good as Fury Road is, you would not think that the Academy would have recognized a movie like that, because it is so bananas, right?
But I remember, like, months before that movie came out, like, seeing that trailer for the first time and being like, I don't know.
For Fury Road?
For Fury Road, yeah. Especially because, you know, we had seen The Road Warrior, obviously, in the theater, like, at the midnight show. And, like, just loving, like, the practical stunt work.
Yeah.
And everything. And then seeing, like, Fury Road, which seemed to be, like, a little CGI heavy, at least in the trailer. But then when the movie opens up and we go to see it, we're like, whoa, it's so good. And yeah, while it does have some CGI in it, there's a lot more practical stuff in it than you would expect for that type of movie made in that type of, in that time period. And that's like one of the things that bugged me about Furiosa, is it seemed like he was working a lot more CGI than practical.
There was some really cool, and I don't know if it's just because they're wearing the same outfit or whatever, but I felt like Anya really kind of reminded me a lot of Charlize.
Oh yeah, when she finally makes the transition with the shaved head and everything, and she's in that costume that Charlize Theron has on in Fury Road. Yeah, like
she sells it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after the truck crashes, you know, Max gets out of the truck. You know, he's beat up again. He gets the kid out, and he's walking around, and you realize that the tanker never had gas in it to begin with. He sees the sand pouring out of it, and then realizes he was a decoy.
Yep.
So my question is, do you think the other people in on this, not Papagallos, because he's obviously the leader, so he knew.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the people that were on top of the tanker, do you think that they knew that they were a decoy?
I don't think so.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think the only way to, especially get the one guy to do it, the mechanic guy, was to tell them that it's like really the gas. Because it's kind of a suicide mission if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because obviously the Marauders are going to follow the tanker.
Until they stop them.
Yeah.
Or something, yeah.
And obviously if they do catch up with them and do get the truck stopped, they're probably going to kill everyone. So maybe they didn't know. Besides Papagallos, maybe he lied to him too and said that, you know, it's a tanker full of gas. And you realize that the gas was actually on the bus with the rest of the caravan that leaves after the tanker goes and all the Marauders follow them.
Mm-hmm.
The precious juice was in the bus all along. And then they blow up the refinery, which is insane, which I read was some huge fucking explosion that they had to warn like the air traffic flying over that area of Australia that they were going to blow this thing up. Well, I was trying to look. The explosion that destroys the compound during the climax was the largest ever in an Australian film. Before going through with the special effect, the production notified the army and the airlines, and all mines in the area were closed as a precaution. And you can tell when that thing explodes that that's a huge explosion, which is all done for real. So Max is out of the truck, realizes he was a decoy. The rest of the Marauders that are still alive see this. They take off because there's no point. And then you have the kid's narration. Well, the gyro captain rolls up again. And they just kind of like share that look.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got through it. Max kind of gives the grin because he knows, yeah, I was taken for a ride. But everyone else got away. And then you have the narration from the kid saying that because Papagalos is dead, the gyro captain actually becomes the leader of the northern tribe. They were headed north to they were going to the coast, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were headed north. The gyro captain becomes the leader of the northern tribe. And then after he dies, the kid actually becomes the leader of the tribe. And then there's that cool shot of just Gibson standing on the road of Max. Just standing on the road like in the twilight, and he says, no one knows what became of the road warrior. He exists now like only in my memories. And it's a really cool closing shot and a cool closing line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They just, he's this mythical figure now. Joel was asking me like how I came across this movie, or like how I first caught it. I honestly don't know. I think I might have seen it like on TBS or TNT or something years and years ago when I was younger, when I was like in junior high or something. Because I knew Thunderdome, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
as we talked about, but I didn't know the Road Warrior. I don't remember. It must have been like on TNT or something. Like that I caught it and was like, whoa, like this movie's pretty fucking good. And then managed to go back and rewatch it or rent it or something and check it out. But do you remember how you caught it?
I think my grandfather was a big fan of Mad Max. I think I remember the first one, seeing like the first one when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
First. That, and then Thunderdome, and then Road Warrior. And I always remember being very confused, like, if this is part 2, why is it just called Road Warrior? How is anybody supposed to fucking know what it's tied to? But,
because at the time, no one knew what it was tied to because American audiences weren't familiar with it. And the titles, when you watch the film, say Mad Max 2. But yeah, it was, when it originally opened up in the States, it was The Road Warrior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But again, I think it's a much better title, and that's why I always refer to it as such.
Yeah. I would probably put money that the Mad Max probably started my fascination with like that kind of revenge plot device because of how the way the first one is structured and how kind of brutal it is with his family.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I would say that's really the climax of the film, because there's still some movie after that where he like tracks down the guys. But the reason he's you mentioned the leg brace that he has in the Road Warriors, because he gets shot in the leg or in the knee at the part of Mad Max when his family is killed, and also his arm gets run over, and apparently that's why he has the short sleeve on one side of the jacket, because that's the arm that got injured. So I think the rumor is that he has the short sleeve because whenever he went to the doctor to get the arm mended, they had to cut the sleeve off to get to his arm. That's where I forget where I read that originally, but that's why he's got like the short sleeve on one. That's obviously why he has the leg brace on the others, because of the injuries he sustains when his family is killed in Mad Max. And I have a book all about like ultra violent movies, and it's got like that shot of Harvey Keitel from Reservoir Dogs where he has the two guns and he's shooting up the cop car. That's what the shot of the front of the book looked like that I've had since I was in junior high or maybe early high school.
Mm-hmm.
That I read, and there were a lot of movies in there that I hadn't seen at that point in time. I remember like Mad Max is in that movie, or is in that book about being like one of the ultra-violent films.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember like getting like really pumped to finally watch Mad Max, and I was like, oh, it's not that violent. But I guess at the time, it was.
Yeah.
Especially the end when he gets the drop on the guy and he handcuffs him to the bike and sets up the like slow, the time delayed explosion with the gas dripping and the lighter, and he says, you can cut through the chain in 10 minutes or you can cut through your foot in 5. Like this thing's going to explode like in under 10 minutes. So your choice. And that's how that film ends. It's with him walking away and then the bike exploding behind him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember just reading that Mad Max was like a super violent film and then watching it and being kind of like almost disappointed that it wasn't more violent because it had kind of been pumped up for me. In True Romance, doesn't Christian Slater, doesn't he drop Mad Max as like one of the great movies of all time?
Mm-hmm.
When he's talking to Lee Donowitz.
Yeah.
He's like, Mad Max, that's a fucking movie. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, that's a fucking movie. And Coming Home in a Body Bag, that's a fucking movie. Which is a bonkers title for a fucking Vietnam War film. In order to appease the Australian censors, Miller cut some of the bloody and violent scenes. And when the film was released in the United States, the MPAA requested 2 more cuts. The shot of Wes removing the arrow from his arm, and then the one of him pulling the boomerang out of the Golden Youth's head.
Yeah.
Although the Australian version that was released is available, that's the one that we have now. It's kind of like the RoboCop version, where I think it's only like the director's cut is the one that you see now.
Yeah.
The original cut that he cut down for the Australian censors no longer exists. So I don't know what else is in that. Violence-wise, maybe that might have been the same version that scene where Wes has more exposition is in as well, but apparently that cut does not exist anymore. Released in Australia on Christmas Eve of 1981, which again, Australia, and this always weirds me out, Christmas Eve is actually in the summertime.
Mm.
So whenever I think of Christmas, you obviously living in the northern hemisphere, you think of, like snow and cold weather and everything, but Christmas in Australia, because it's the southern hemisphere, it's summertime down there. Released on Christmas Eve of 1981, film goes to gross $10.8 million in Australian dollars, doubling the box office haul of its predecessor, which at the time was Australia's highest grossing film. Opens in the United States May 21st, 1982. Grosses $2.5 million in 704 theaters for a 4th place finish for the weekend. Conan the Barbarian in its second week is the number 1 film. Good movie. And behind it, Porky's. Porky's? I remember my dad telling me about Porky's when I was younger. He's like, that movie was this crazy hit. I watched it and I was like, I don't see why. It's kind of a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
And these days it's a really bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
Porky's was number 1 at the box office for fucking 8 weeks straight. In 1982. I watched that movie, dude. If you've never seen it, watch that movie and tell me if you see that movie being some fucking runaway hit.
I'm aware of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it.
It's not that good. Like it's like a sex comedy type deal.
Yeah.
I didn't get it, but maybe that's because I'm older and it's like a 40-year-old movie.
Mm-hmm.
But still, like I remember watching it not too long ago, like within the last 4 to 5 years probably, and being like, wow, really? I can't believe that movie was a hit. My dad was like, yeah, that movie's a huge fucking hit. That movie was huge. So in doing the research, trying to look up to see when The Road Warrior actually opened in the States, I was looking at the box office stuff and saw that Yeah, it opened up in 82, March of 82. May of 82, excuse me. And Conan the Barbarian was out about that time. This is just before like E.T. and Poltergeist, The Thing, Blade Runner. That's less than a month before all those movies come out. So it's obviously called The Road Warrior. We talked about this because it wasn't well known. But its distributor, American International Pictures, which distributed Mad Max, was in the process of being sold to Filmways, and that's why Mad Max didn't get a really big push in the United States.
Theatrically, right?
Yeah, theatrically. That's why it was very unknown, and that's why Warner Brothers had decided to call Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior, is because Mad Max hadn't gotten a big release and really wasn't well known. Although, from what I read, it was kind of picking up steam because it was like airing on HBO and stuff. But none of the advertisement for the Road Warrior makes any mention of Mad Max. So here's some reviews for you. Legendary film critic Pauline Kael called the film a mutant film sprung from virtually all action genres, creating one continuous spurt of energy by using jangly fast editing. However, she criticizes Miller's attempt to tap into the universal concept of the hero, which she said made the film joyless, sappy, and sentimental. I don't find that at all. I don't find it sentimental. I don't find it joyless. It's pretty fucking rad. And there's humor in the film.
Yeah, it's not. And it's
not a slog. All right, you want another one?
Yes.
All right, film critic Richard Scheib wrote that The Road Warrior was one of the few occasions where a sequel makes a dramatic improvement in quality over its predecessor. He called it a kinetic comic book of a film and an exhilarating non-stop roller coaster ride of a film that contains some of the most exciting stunts and car crashes ever put on screen. 100% agree. He also compares Mel Gibson's performance of Max to that of Clint Eastwood's portrayal of the Man with No Name. See that? I also heard that the relationship between Max and the kid is kind of taken from Shane.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And even the story beats kind of follow those beats from Shane, where it's kind of like this lone guy rides into town and kind of gets drawn into this conflict that he has, nothing to do with, but ends up choosing to do, to fight and make a stand with, the people that are being harassed. Vincent Canby of the New York Times: never has a film's vision of post-nuclear Holocaust world seemed quite as desolate and as brutal or as action-packed and sometimes as funny as in George Miller's apocalyptic The Road Warrior, an extravagant film fantasy that looks like a sadomasochistic comic book come to life. All those guys in that bondage gear. Writing a review for Aries magazine, Christopher John said, "It's taut scripting, exceptional performances, and pulse-pounding pacing, which leaves an audience breathless, combined to make it one of the best science fiction films of the year. It also has the courage to show what the face of death really looks like. Mel Gibson's portrayal of Max is hard, bitter, and realistic. He is neither hero nor coward, but a man caught up in a mad future which he confronts unafraid."
It's a good write-up.
Yeah, it is a good write-up. And then, from our buddy Roger Ebert in the Chicago Sun-Times, giving the film 3.5 stars out of 4, called it a film of pure action and kinetic energy, one of the most relentlessly aggressive movies ever made. While pointing out that the film doesn't develop its vision of a violent future world with characters or dialogue and only has the barest bones of a plot, he did praise its action sequences. Which, again, everything is like, I completely get what's going on. I don't need to be explained everything. You get the conflict of the film. You get where these characters are coming from.
I watched their little segment when they reviewed this.
Mm-hmm.
And
what's Siskel say about it?
He was raving about it.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. How amazing it was, and he was all, and it's hyper violent, so you would think that I would hate it, but I just loved it. I can't help myself, or what. And then Roger Ebert kind of agrees with him, but he was like, it's an impressive movie, but I don't think that it really sold the dystopian aspect as well as it should. He was like, it presents it well, not in the most realistic way, or maybe like the way that you can buy it in real life, but in the world of cinema, it still works, is what he says.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
I mean, like, what does he want?
I don't know.
Does he want,
Sometimes
like, the post-nuclear Holocaust thing where there's like mutant freaks running around.
I don't know. He didn't like Fight Club either, so can't win them all.
He always had like weird opinions on some things where he was like loving some trash movie, but then kind of like not being on board with a movie that's obviously a masterpiece.
Like he gave, and I like this movie, but I'm going to bring it up just because I know you hate it. But I believe he gave Devil's Rejects 2 thumbs up.
Really?
Yeah.
Him and what was it? Was he doing it with Roper at the time?
Yeah, I think it was Roper back then.
Yeah. Because Roper was his partner for a long time until Ebert got sick and couldn't do the show anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It was just writing his reviews instead of reviewing them on TV. Sometimes he loved like absolute trash movies and would kind of put a knock on a masterpiece. But he didn't hate the movie. He was just kind of like, oh, it doesn't sell this as much as it should.
Yeah.
Which, again, like, what are you expecting? Like, I think it sells it just fine.
He gives it still a near flawless 3.5 out of 4.
Yeah. So sometimes I wonder, like, is it just me because I love this movie so much? Where I'm just like, I don't see where these reviewers are coming from, where they're talking trash on it. You know that they chose where to shoot The Road Warrior because they knew they would get very, very little rain. So it would look like just dried out, like the wasteland.
Oh.
And then when they were shooting down there, they actually had some freak storm come through and rain so much that they had to shut down production for like a week.
Really?
Yeah.
For a week?
Yeah. The desolate location was chosen because the rain prediction where they were going to be was virtually no rain in the forecast for the length of the shoot, which I think was a few months. However, during production, it ended up raining for the first time in 4 years and caused a week delay in the schedule.
4 years? Wow. That's unfortunate.
I mean, you wouldn't know about watching the film that they got so much rain that it flooded everything and they had to shut down. But yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. Like they choose this location. They're like, oh, we'll be fine. We don't get any rain, and all of a sudden, like a once in a decade storm rolls through.
I was reading that they have a Mad Max 2 museum.
And where it was shot, yeah. In New South Wales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the reviews I have for you. Film gets nominated for 7 Australian Film Institute Awards. Best Direction, Best Editing, Best Production Design, Sound, Best Costume Design, Best Cinematography, and Best Original Score, winning all but cinematography and score. And unfortunately, it wasn't even nominated for Best Film at the Australian Academy Awards. This is what makes him a known name in the States. This is where he gets the bigger jobs. This is the film that convinced Steven Spielberg to bring Miller on to direct one of the segments of the Twilight Zone movie, which, in my opinion, his remake of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet is the absolute pinnacle of that film.
Mm-hmm.
That section of the movie is so fucking good. As much as I like the original Richard Matheson episode for the Twilight Zone with Shatner, the movie blows it away. The movie is terrifying. It used to scare the shit out of me when I was younger because the demon or the troll that is causing the trouble with the plane is so fucking scary looking. And Lithgow gives this incredible performance as like the crazy guy who's not really crazy. It's so good, man. That movie is a mixed bag. Fuck John Landis and the shit that goes down with his segment. The Steven Spielberg segment is not that great.
Mm-hmm.
Is like very, very sappy, speaking of. But the Joe Dante section, that's a remake of It's a Good Life, where the kid can change things with his mind, is pretty good. It's kind of like a live action, like Looney Tunes. And the George Miller section that ends the film, wisely putting the best at the very end. That section always blows me away whenever I watch that movie. It's so fucking good. And I remember after knowing Mad Max and the Road Warrior, I remember like seeing that he had directed that and was like, whoa, that's crazy. I wouldn't have expected him to have done that, but it makes sense now. And it's so good. If you haven't seen the Twilight Zone movie, skip like the first two and just watch the Joe Dante and George Miller sections of the film. And then after that, he goes on to Thunderdome, which I think was a decent-sized hit. Again, like Thunderdome, it's like mid-'80s. Like Mel Gibson wasn't that big of a star yet. This was before Lethal Weapon. But it does pretty decent, if I'm remembering correctly. It's not that good, like you said. Like he took like what you would say at the time was like a super violent premise, and just kind of makes it a kids movie. At least the second half is a kids movie, and it's not that interesting. Although they bring back Bruce Spence as the gyro captain, only now he's like an airplane captain. He's basically the same character without being the same character. I think like whoever they wanted wasn't going to be able to do it, so they're just like, oh yeah, we'll just call this guy back. Yeah. Bruce Spence, by the way, who plays the gyro captain in Road Warrior, is like one of the bigger like character actors in Australia. He's in a ton of shit. He's even in Lord of the Rings movies. Although I think he's dressed up as an orc or something, so you won't recognize him right away. But yeah, he's a big character actor in Australia. And here's a little fun fact. Apparently Miller didn't own the rights to the Mad Max films, at least with Road Warrior and Thunderdome, because they were owned by Warner Brothers. But in the early 90s, he's hired by the studio to direct the adaptation of Contact. And he works in pre-production for a year or two, but he and Warner Brothers part ways because over whatever creative differences, but it's amicable. And in exchange for him stepping away, Warner Brothers gave him the rights to Mad Max, so he can do whatever he wants. Now he's still set up at Warner Brothers with those films, but they turn over the rights to Road Warrior and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome to him to kind of as a consolation prize for him stepping away from directing Contact, and then they hire Zemeckis off of Forrest Gump to direct it. So I thought that was interesting that he now has those rights. You figured he would have had them, but apparently Warner Brothers held the rights to those characters. You said he was 80. I hope he has another movie or two in him.
I'm gonna call it now. I think through the years you'll probably warm up more to Furiosa, kind of like The Evil Dead.
Maybe I will. I will fully admit to being like pretty tired today, so sometimes that can kind of color how I view a film. I will tell you right now, I still don't think it needed to be 2.5 hours. Like, it's by far the longest
Mad Max
film. Like, even Thunderdome is like just 100 minutes, just over 100 minutes. And Fury Road is still like under 2 hours.
It kind of made me think, like, is this because he's not going back into this world and he just wanted to go out on the, like, I'm going to make this as long as I can?
Maybe he has Final Cut and he was just like, fuck it.
Because, I mean, I read that it took them 3 months just to shoot that one action scene on the rig.
I mean, it's a good action scene.
Yeah, it's fucking...
That scene was good. Even the stuff earlier on in the film is good. The last action scene is good with her chasing the guys.
I like
Hemsworth and his people.
I like the opening with her, with the mom
chasing them on the bike. Yeah,
that was a great, solid opening.
Yeah, I'll give it another look. You know, wait for it to hit HBO in a few months, and then I'll watch it again and see how I feel about it.
All right, man.
But I didn't hate it. I just want to say I didn't hate it. I was just a little underwhelmed by it, especially coming off of the high of rewatching The Road Warrior again, and then obviously, you know, Fury Road is another action masterpiece. That's got a very simple setup as well. It's basically just a chase film.
Yeah, I do agree with you that Fury Road is very impressive on the fact that it is a modern action film that relies more on practical stunts. and it shows through. And Furiosa, although there are still some practical stunts throughout, it does do. Miller is leaning a little bit more into the CGI.
Yeah,
when he didn't have to. Next episode, Ryan will be returning, and we're going to talk about Annihilation. If you're stumbling upon this podcast, we operate out of San Diego, California, and we've been doing this for almost 8 years now. We're available on all major podcast platforms, including Luminary, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. If it plays a podcast, we're probably on there, so check us out. We go by Drop the Mic, and we have an incredible backlog of episodes, so there's probably something there for you. We never kind of limit ourselves to one genre. We hop around constantly. If you listen all the time, then you're probably aware of that. But yeah, go support us, and thank you for everyone who consistently listens. And thank you, Chris, for making time for the show.
Well, always. But we didn't get into what are we going to do next?
Oh yeah, your teaser. How could I have forgotten? Take it away.
Well, next month we will start our 3rd annual Summer of Sci-Fi, even though this was kind of, like you said, a bridge episode, because technically the Road Warrior would be considered sci-fi.
Yes.
But I didn't know if it was hard enough sci-fi to classify it as that. And because Furiosa was coming out in May, I chose to talk about it in May. But we will officially begin Summer of Sci-Fi next month.
Mm-hmm.
With one of the biggest films of all time, one of the biggest and best sequels of all time. Speaking of best sequels, like The Road Warrior. Gonna get into it. Like The Road Warrior, my pick for the best film of this series. Huge movie.
We're talking like...
This is a huge blockbuster.
Groundbreaking.
Yes. Can't wait to talk about it. One of my absolute favorite films. And again, what I would consider like the pinnacle of this group of movies. Like The Road Warrior is the best Mad Max film, in my opinion. This movie is the best of these films.
That was a good tease.
I hope so. I always am like wondering how much I should say without really giving it away.
Well, with
if people are listening closely enough, maybe they figured it out already. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Maybe.
All I know is I have a ton of fucking notes to take. So I need to get started.
Yeah. It will be one of our more lengthy episodes, I'm sure.
Probably.
And this was fun tonight, too.
This is a good movie.
I love Mad Max, unlike other people.
That person has never watched The Road Warrior. She should. It might change your mind.
I guess until next week, or for you, the end of next month.
The end of June sometime.
I guess we'll wrap up and get out of here. This is Wesley and Chris signing off, saying good fight.
And good night.
Greetings from the Humongous, the Lord Humongous, the warrior of the wasteland, the Ayatollah of rock and roller.
I'm gravely disappointed. Again, you have made me unleash my dogs of war. Look at what remains of your gallant scouts. Why? Because you're selfish. You hoard your gasoline. You will not listen to reason. Now, my prisoners say, you plan to take your gasoline out of the wasteland. You send them out this morning to find a vehicle. A rig big enough to hold that fat tank of gas. What a puny plan. Look around you.